Hi, everyone. This is Karen Smiley. Welcome to 6Ps and AI Pods. This post is part of our AI 6P interview series on AI, software, and wetware. Our guests share their experiences with using AI and how they feel about AI using their data and content. I am delighted to welcome Bonnie Marcus from California as my guest today on AI, software, and wetware. Bonnie, thank you so much for joining me on this interview. Please tell us about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Well, I am a former CEO. I have had over 20 years in the corporate arena. And believe it or not, I started out as a kindergarten teacher. So if you look at me and you say, oh, she must have gone to business school, no, forget that. I really ended up getting into business through necessity because I got a divorce and my kids were young and I really couldn't pay the bills with kindergarten anymore. So I jumped into the workplace and started entry level and ended up navigating and working my way to the C-suite. When I left that, I had a couple of gigs where I was one of three principals in a healthcare tech startup and helped bring on 18 million in venture capital. And that was when the internet was really new, when people were really afraid to invest in it and work within it. They didn't really know what to expect. In 2007, I started my own practice as an executive coach. And I've been working as an executive coach ever since. I've written and published two books. I wrote for Forbes for about 13 years and moved over to Substack and just completed 244 Badass Women at Any Age podcast.
That's an amazing accomplishment, and going from kindergarten teacher to CEO without going through business school. That's a really interesting progression. We all know how tough the corporate environment can be, especially for women. So I'm hoping we'll hear more about that as we talk today.
Okay.
Great. So I ask this of everyone for understanding the AI stories that you're going to tell. What is your level of experience with using AI or machine learning or any kind of analytics? I'm wondering if you used it professionally or if you use AI tools personally, or if you've ever studied the technologies.
Have not studied the technologies. I would rate myself as a novice. I kind of dabble in it, right? Because I was not trained in it. I use it mostly professionally, but also personally. I've consulted ChatGPT about a diagnosis or medications or exercise recommendations, etc. And I follow that advice. I even print out some things and take it to my doctor and say, what do you think? And that physician will warn me not to use ChatGPT for any kind of personal information. But I find that it's a pretty reliable source. Professionally, I use it mostly for Substack. It helps me write notes. It helps me organize my thoughts in a way that I feel is much more professional. And I especially like the way it helps me with titles and subtitles,
So brainstorming something catchy to use for the title tests and such that they have now.
as well as generating images.
Okay, so use it for image generation as well. You have a lot of things there that I'm going to follow up on. People used to make jokes about Dr. Google, where now it's Dr. ChatGPT, where people will ask questions and look up symptoms. It can be helpful, it can be wrong. As your doctor is saying,
You know what his concern was, Karen? It's privacy.
oh, yeah, absolutely.
He said to me, well, all physicians these days use AI. I can't remember the exact AI that they use, but he said many physicians do that, but it's so protected. Whereas when I put things out there on ChatGPT, I risk it not being protected.
Yeah, a lot of medical offices are using what they call AI scribes now, where they have a note taker basically listening in on your visit with the doctor and taking notes for the doctor so that they can actually pay more attention to the patient. In the US here, a lot of people look at whether those tools have HIPAA protections, HIPAA, for the privacy of the information and the medical records. ChatGPT has none of those requirements. So if you ask them, hey, I'm having trouble with this rash, or whatever, that information gets attached to you and there's no privacy around it. It's a fair concern.
I'm a runner and dancer. I'm very active, and I have an irritated IT band, right, that I did
Mm.
running hills. I didn't know what to do, and I'm not going to call my doctor necessarily about that. So I did ask advice on what exercises I can do, what I shouldn't do, and how can I heal. Nothing too complicated.
I'm curious what advice you got for that and whether
He
it.
was really useful. I live in Santa Barbara, California. It's very hilly, and I live on a hill, right? I usually go out the door and run early in the morning, and I can't avoid the hills. The advice was that it puts a lot of stress on your IT band to run up and down hills. And so for a while, it said, don't even walk up and down those hills. Let your
Mm.
IT band mend for a while. I would always get on a heating pad and it would tell me no ice and those kinds of things. So it
Yeah.
was useful.
Well, it's good to hear. I've heard a lot of different stories, both of how it's been useful and how it's been not so useful. So I always like to hear how people are using it. You also mentioned that you had started in a healthcare tech startup and raised venture funds for that. Could you say a little bit about what your healthcare tech startup did?
This was a couple of decades ago when the internet,
Uh,
as I said, was very new. But I had experience in home health care, both management and operational experience. I was originally hired as a consultant. I ended up being one of three principals in this company. What we did was solve the problem of all the paperwork involved in nurses documenting Medicare visits when they go into the home. Now, Medicare, without getting into it deeply, is highly regulated, and you need to cross the right T, dot the right I, or you're going to get rejected and all this kind of stuff. So we had to build all those guidelines in. We created the first point of care system so that a nurse didn't need to go into the home with a stack of paper like this, trying to fumble through and get through the visit and document it at the same time. We had a little tablet and we put all of the documentation in there, and then the nurse would upload that at the end of the day. And it would make her life easier, but also, as you were saying before, enabled that kind of personal connection with the patient rather than shuffling paper, really being able to have more of a intimate conversation.
It sounds like a really useful tool. I would guess that it maybe increased the percentage of their form submittals came
That
through
worked.
without issues and hopefully gave them more time with the patients as well.
Right, right.
What happened to that company?
We ended up raising 18 million in venture capital, and the primary investor ended up taking over the company.
Ah, okay. Sounds
Yeah.
like a successful exit then.
I was then vice president of sales. I was brought on full time. I hired and trained a large national sales force of nurses.
Nice. Very cool. Can you say a little bit about what you do as an executive coach?
Yes, I work with professional women who are really interested in understanding how to navigate the complexities of the workplace today. And this has been a primary focus of me based on my own experience of when I had been working with one company for about 8 years and was overlooked for a promotion. When I was a top performer, I had done really well, but when a promotion was available, they brought in a man. And I was totally blindsided. But that led to my first book, which is The Politics of Promotion: How High Achieving Women Get Ahead and Stay Ahead. And my interest in how women need to be politically savvy and they need to pay attention. Doing the hard work, getting great results, that's really important, but it's not the sole thing that's going to help you to thrive in the workplace. And so, learning how to be politically savvy, what are the tools you need, and how to pay attention. I've been helping women ever since.
I think you had mentioned also that one of your focus areas now is looking at how AI is impacting women in the workplace. Can you say a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Because the adoption rate, as you know, you probably know the exact percentage. It's probably under 30% of women who have embraced AI. This is dangerous, obviously, for women because we need to be involved. We need to share our perspectives and our experiences and our values and understand enough so that we can help to shape the future and be a part of shaping the future. Number one, I think it's a great leadership opportunity that it presents to women right now. And we shouldn't shy away from it. We should embrace it and learn AI and be a role model and volunteer to start initiatives in your company if that's not something that is currently being adopted. I think it's helpful for more women to do that because then it fosters other women and their comfort level to do it. And it allows women to step into leadership. I think it's a great opportunity. Right. And the other thing that I'm focusing on, I'm releasing a newsletter this week about how generative AI affects women of all ages in the workplace and how companies think of AI as an objective, neutral tool. And the algorithms are not neutral. That's actually the title of my newsletter. That the algorithms are based on our history, which includes gender bias, gendered ageism, all the sexist stereotypes and assumptions. It's looking at history, that's how it builds it. It's so important that companies understand that it's not neutral, that it's not a tool that's going to fix inequality in the workplace. Quite the opposite. It actually promotes it because of these algorithms. In order for a company to really make a change, they can't put these little filters and band-aids on AI. It's got to be a lot more basic than that. And companies need to address the bias and discrimination in their company and not look to AI as an objective tool that's going to help create equality for women. Unfortunately, many companies are now using, I don't know what the adoption rate is. You may know this for hiring and promoting, and it just
Yeah.
perpetuates the bias.
Yeah, there have been a lot of articles about the different types of biases that surface. It's interesting because AI potentially could be more objective than a human. It could overlook affinity biases where, hey, we both went to the same college or something like that. But right now, as most of the tools are implemented, like you said, they're based on biased data because it came from a biased world. And in a lot of cases, the people that built those tools didn't take any care to identify or correct for that. It's very hard to correct for bias, but trying makes a big difference
The people who built those tools are men.
for the most part, which is another aspect of the bias, right? Because teams that are not representative tend not to build representative systems.
So, for instance, if it misses the nuances in the woman's career, say she took a little time off to raise her children, that would normally be kicked right out in terms of a review of a resume for hiring purposes. There are different nuances in a woman's career due to perhaps caregiving and switching to part-time to full-time, et cetera, where they have lost their leadership status temporarily. that would work against them. That's why women's voices are so important, and we really need to be involved in creating these algorithms.
That's definitely important. I'm glad you're calling that out. This interview will publish sometime after your article comes out, but we'll put in a link here and hopefully if anyone missed it the first time, they'll be able to go back and review it because it's a really important topic as far as generative AI. A lot of the companies on the rollouts of AI, sometimes they're very limited as far as guidelines or here's what you can and can't use it with. Here's what data you should or shouldn't put into it. In a lot of cases, there isn't actually time allocated for training or learning. People are just supposed to do it and it's magically going to save them time. But women tend to take on more of the burdens, the office chores, assignments, and they don't necessarily have extra time at night because they're already working their second job at home practically. So they have less time to just experiment with it and play around with it. There are a lot of factors that play into why women's adoption has been lower. There are also studies showing that women are penalized for using AI more so than men who use it similarly. There's an aspect of unfairness. So even women who are using it may be less willing to acknowledge that they're using it.
Read that study, I was incredulous. Along with the data that I pulled from the Stanford University study, which showed the gender bias and stereotypes, which said you take identical CVs, male, female, and the male is rated much higher than the female. I think women also can't be afraid of trying something new and a new challenge. And I realize our time is very limited and our stress level is high, but we really do need to embrace this. Not necessarily, Karen, because we're going to totally be dismissed and lose our jobs. I mean, that is a potential factor, but also because it will help us be a more valuable employee. It will help us be more productive in the long run. And like anything new, it takes time to learn something new and get comfortable with it. And I realize that's a time investment up front, but
Mhm.
later it will save time and help them out.
The job impact is something that I talked about a little bit in my book, and I know other people have looked at that as well. Some studies show that the types of jobs that are most amenable to impact from AI automation, women fill a higher percentage of those jobs than men do. So they're more likely to be affected by it. It's another factor that we need to look at. This conversation is reminding me in our new She Writes AI book that we're developing. One of the chapters by Cheyenne Dominguez is why women must get AI savvy now. And you're hitting a lot of the same points that Cheyenne hits in her chapter. And it's pointing out why women's voices matter. Celeste Garcia has a chapter looking at the whole history of women who have actually been involved in AI but don't get credit for it. And so there isn't that visibility in the way that you solve an actual problem with the tech motivates more women to go into the field and to be involved in it. So there's a lot of emphasis that it's not so much a problem of women not caring about technology or being interested in it, but a lot of influences tend to push them away
Well,
from
there
being
are just
involved
a
in
lot
it.
of negativity
Mhm.
around AI and controversy that we're all subject to. And
Mhm.
it's hard to weed through that and say, well, how real is that? And how will that affect me in the long run?
I want to talk a little bit about your executive coaching business and in your writing and how you do or don't use AI tools to support you in doing that work.
As far as my writing is concerned, sometimes I will start with, I'll have an idea and I'll reach out and research what that idea is. It might help me change my direction a little bit, but it's such an easy tool to get the full span of research around a particular topic. I've become much more fluent in how to use prompts that will give me exactly what I'm looking for. And I think it helps the depth of my content in
Mhm.
writing. It definitely is a time saver because I would be doing all of that manually myself. As far as coming up with punchy titles, sometimes I will ask and then I'll look at them and then I'll use my own. For instance, I recently did an article about what I learned from interviewing 244 badass women. And I had asked AI after I wrote the article to give me some suggestions. I rejected all of them and then I just used my own.
Yeah, titles are one area where, brainstorming or coming up with suggestions. Some people find it useful and some don't.
Most of the time I find it useful, or sometimes I'll just take their subtitle suggestion and use
Mm.
that, but I find
Mhm.
it useful and it
So
gets
it's,
me thinking.
yeah, thinking is good. That's what the wetware part of the series is all about, using our own brains along with it. So when you do research, is there one specific thing that you asked it to help you research that you could give as an example?
I recently wrote an article about misogyny in leadership and how that shows up in the workplace. At least that wasn't the title of the article, but that was the subject of my research. And I wanted to pull in studies, whether it was from Yale or Harvard Business Review or some credible sources to help supplement that particular article.
When you asked it to give you references on misogyny in the workplace, how many of the references that it gave you turned out to be good as opposed to made up? You hear a lot of stories about how it will occasionally make up references that don't actually exist or from a different source or a
Ah,
different author, or it doesn't say
but
what they say.
that
It's
has to do with how you use the prompt and how you vet it. Say it's something that I want to use from Harvard Business Review. I'll get the link and then I read that article myself and pull what I can from it. There's no question then that it's legitimate.
of the list of links that it would give you. Let's say if it gave you 10 links, how many of them would you find were good and how many didn't really go to an article that said anything that was useful for you?
Most of them were good. Whether I include them all is another
Mhm.
story. And sometimes I will reference some research or a study more than once in the article because it addresses different aspects of what I'm writing about. I haven't had any experience really where the research isn't legit.
Wow,
So I
okay.
guess I'm lucky.
As you said, no matter how accurate you think it may be, just read it yourself and validate it because summarizations tend to gloss over. We see this with human writing. Someone will publish this very detailed 54-page study, and then there's this clickbait article that summarizes and calls out things like, oh, ChatGPT is rotting your brain. Well, that's not what the article said. So just
No, it's
always having
important.
to
And
validate.
as I mentioned before, I wrote for Forbes for about 13 years, and that was a great training ground because they tested all the links. And my editor would definitely say, that's not a good source or whatever. So I learned to vet and to pay a lot of attention.
Yeah, good experience there, certainly. Yeah, so you mentioned using it for help with your medical care. You also mentioned using it to create images for you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I'm just learning how to do that. I was pretty excited about the image I used for the Badass Women one because I had an actual picture of me recording a podcast. I wanted them to use that photo of me and then put it in kind of a cartoonish thing. Again, I think it depends on how, and I'm learning this, good you are at giving direction. Like, I want this to look like Picasso. I want this to look like Renoir. I want this to look like a cartoon, right? And I am so inspired by a lot of my colleagues on Substack who are so good at this and use a variety of different apps to do it. So I'm
Mhm.
getting there. I'm learning, experimenting.
You've probably seen some of the same articles I have by Jenny Oyang and AI Meets Girl Boss and Karen Spinner recently doing some really neat things with the branding and having consistent brand images for their sets of articles. I've actually signed up for an hour and a half course with Noemi from time on using Canva to come up with them. So that's not necessarily AI, but at least working on the imagery. Substack is a writer's platform, but images seem to matter in terms of getting people's attention and getting them to read your words.
Now, do you use images in your notes as well?
Rarely, I would say.
Okay.
Occasionally I do, but usually it's because I'm sharing some of my articles. I probably share more of other people's articles than I do of my own. And so usually Substack includes some sort of image along with that, but not too often. I'm probably not as good at notes as you are.
Well, I haven't automated the notes, and I know there are different apps out there that could help me with that, specifically for Substack, but I haven't done that yet.
Sounds like you're making good use of different AI tools for different purposes in your writing.
Learning from my colleagues. I read about what they're experimenting with and what they're doing. Some of the authors are much more in depth about challenges and how to use it well and to your advantage. It helps me eliminate a lot of the mistakes that I think a lot of people may make. I think that's the primary way I learn.
We all learn best by
Substack.
making mistakes, right? So with your executive coaching, is there any way in which you're currently using AI to help you with that
Just
business?
to otter AI to transcribe meetings and stuff.
Okay, yeah, the note takers are very popular.
And then I was doing some in-depth work with one of my clients where I interviewed five of her colleagues for feedback. It was a feedback tool. By the time I had all these conversations and got all the written documentation, I turned to AI to help me summarize all of this and pull out some of the key points. And did AI pick up on everything I wanted to or position it in the best way I wanted to? No, but it really helped me and it was a great time saver. It probably picked up on a couple of things that maybe I would miss in my summary. There was just so much information to bring together and summarize, and it was helpful.
Do your clients have any concerns about privacy as far as if you put information about your discussions with them into an AI tool? Has that ever come up?
No, because I never put in a name.
Oh, okay. That's
It's
good. So
anonymous.
yeah, so you protect that. That's good to know. So you use AI for a lot of things. Are there any things that you would say, no, I'm never going to use AI for it?
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot. And what's interesting is I don't know what I don't know, right? I've got a select number of tools that I'm using. And if I read about somebody recommends something else, I may try it. But there's so much that I don't know about. I don't know how to answer that question because I don't know enough.
In a lot of cases, for instance, just writing emails, almost all the email clients nowadays offer to help you write with AI, or LinkedIn offers to help you write with AI. Do you just say, no, I'm going to write my own words here? You
I write all my
purposely,
emails and everything. Yeah.
you're choosing not to use an AI tool for those. So those are examples of
If I
the,
were back in corporate, I would probably use it for that purpose. Simply the number of emails that one has to deal with during the course of the day. At one point, I had 18 direct reports, right? I think it would be much easier and it would be helpful in terms of the best way to position some emails where I needed to be cognizant of the politics involved, etc. So I could see the use of that, but from my own practice right now, I don't.
would you ever use it for, say, generating music, or would you listen to AI generated music on a streaming service, or would you avoid that?
I wouldn't intentionally avoid it, but my son's a musician, and I guess AI generated music
He probably has opinions about that.
rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, a lot of musicians I've heard from have pretty strong feelings about how AI generated music is crowding out their music from having a chance of being heard.
Right. I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday about an app that you can use to kind of generate some music from your lyrics. Nano, or I can't remember the name of it. I was like, oh, I guess that's kind of cool. But I have to think about it. I don't write music.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons that I asked, like you mentioned about your son, so as a musician, for instance, he might be worried about his music not being heard. Other musicians that I've talked to, for instance, or other artists will say one of their concerns is it's not just the AI tools competing against them, it's that it is doing it by using their own works, their own previous images, photographs, recordings, their own music, and it's basically using it against them. It was taken without their permission. There's this concept of the three C's for creative rights, which is consent and credit and compensation. The idea is that if they're going to use someone's works, whether it's your writing on Substack or your son's music or anything else, that you should have the option of whether to consent to that and to be credited as a source or even to be compensated for it. And so some people say that that is really a mandatory thing, and others say that it's
It's a,
okay to let them scrape everything in the world and just use it. What are your thoughts?
I don't think it's okay. And I think that artists need to be acknowledged and compensated.
Okay. It sounds like the main tool that you used is ChatGPT. Do you feel like OpenAI has been transparent about sharing where they got the data that they used to build ChatGPT? No, not at all.
And it's interesting because the article that I'm writing about, the bias that's baked into it is that it's a secret how these algorithms are really created. That's kind of beyond our scope.
Most of the tools, particularly ChatGPT, are not transparent. There was even this talk about the videos and oh, they use publicly available information. Well, that includes YouTube videos that have copyright attached to them, and that wasn't respected. But they were very cagey about acknowledging where they got their data, and there are a lot of lawsuits around people challenging some of the data that was used, some of the different creative works that were used.
It's scary. It really is scary because we have little control over it.
Were you aware of what happened with LinkedIn? I guess it was summer 2024. They came out and basically said, we're going to opt you in so that we're allowed to use anything that you've put into the site up until now. But if you want to, you can opt out of it being used from here on. They were not exactly transparent about it. So a lot of people never heard about that happening, but there was some fuss about
I
it.
didn't hear about that happening. I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah, there are two places that you need to go to opt out of them using your information for training. Of course, they're owned by Microsoft, so there's that whole that's
Oh boy.
yeah, they have their own
Open the
models and
floodgates.
yeah, exactly. So there are a lot of places where companies have not been transparent about how they use our data or where they got it from. And sometimes just as members of the public, if you travel, you go through TSA and they've got your information. Some of them are trying to use machine learning to recognize your face and automatically compare it to your ID. Some people don't want their faces scanned. We have the right to opt out of that, but it's a difficult right to exercise, I think, especially in the climate that we're in now.
Yeah, I can't remember which airport it was that had that screening, that type of screening already.
Did you agree to let them take your picture and use it? Most people don't know that you can even opt out. I haven't been traveling for some years now, really since COVID, but the friends who have traveled have said it's in small print at the bottom of those big signs that they
Like,
put in the area that you go through. It's saying you can't choose to
typical.
opt out. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to
But
pull out your reading glasses for that.
yeah, but some have opted out successfully. And some people say, you know what, it feels too risky to do that.
And we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. That's the scary thing.
Yeah. As far as use of our personal data, you sign up for a video streaming site or social media. Have you ever had that information leak out and then cause trouble for you, a privacy concern or anything like that?
I don't know where all the fishing comes from, but it's endless. And how do you even find the source of it?
Yeah, because then our data gets captured and sold, and it's very hard to trace into combat. Some people I've talked to have been very lucky. I've talked to people in other countries like, no, I've never had a data breach. Most people in the US, like, yeah, I get about one every year. So it seems to vary a lot. I'm always curious what people's experiences are.
Yeah. I feel like I need to knock on wood about this.
Yeah. Last question. With a lot of these AI and tech companies, public distrust has been growing, and that is probably healthy, given that we are
But we
learning more
only,
about what they are doing with our data.
but we don't know everything about what they're doing with our data.
Right. We don't know everything, but as we learn more, we realize that in many cases they haven't been trustworthy custodians of our data. So I think that distrust is healthy, but I'm wondering if you could control these companies. Let's just say you were in charge of OpenAI. What would you do to help to make it a company that could be trusted?
Figure out how to be more transparent, I guess.
Yeah. What about bias?
I mean, that's part of it, I think.
Mm.
I would definitely be a supporter of bringing on more women who are involved in the creation of it, because I think right now a lot of it's been created in a bubble, a male bubble. I think women's participation is critical.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you're shining a light on that and the impact on women in the work. I'm really looking forward to your article coming out about Gen AI in the workplace. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience? Is there any question that you were hoping I would ask you that I didn't ask?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, just to recap, say a little bit about your newsletter and your article, and you've got two books, right?
Two books. The first book I wrote is The Politics of Promotion: How High Achieving Women Get Ahead and Stay Ahead. The second book is How Women
Okay.
Over 50 Regain Their Confidence, Claim Workplace Power. My newsletter is Own Your Ambition on Substack.
Are your two books self-published, or did you go with a conventional or hybrid publisher?
The first book was published by Wiley, and then I took over the rights of it and republished it, self-published it on Amazon. The second book was a hybrid publisher. What's in the works is for the first time, I'm writing a novel.
Oh, very cool. What's it about, if you can say?
It's about a very disturbed young woman who grows up in a very wealthy family. Father is a tech executive, and they live a very entitled lifestyle. But the result of that is not only that there are no consequences in a lot of their actions, but they've become very dysfunctional. And this is particularly focused on just the daughter.
So this is your first adventure into fiction. Your other two books were nonfiction, right?
Correct. Yes. Food challenge.
What prompted you to start?
One way I used AI is in the beginning, I was struggling, and writers will know what I'm talking about, with the point of view. And I kept switching from one character to another, which was really challenging for a reader. So I looked to ChatGPT to help me, to train me on how to stay into one point of view.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah,
I haven't undertaken any fiction yet. It's a whole other world.
it's a whole other world. I can write nonfiction in my sleep. Yeah, I've been doing it for so long, but this is new, big challenge.
Yeah, very interesting. I read a book, I guess it was about a year ago now, from Stella Foss. I don't know if you've seen
Yeah,
her
I
writing.
love Stella. She was on my
Yes.
podcast twice.
Oh, yeah, she's amazing. I interviewed her as one of my early guests, and she has this book. You probably heard about it then, Write and Sell a Well-Seasoned Romance. Did you see that book? I still am not planning to write a romance novel, but some of the advice in the book about how to structure your novel and how to make it flow, and just going through the mechanics even of publishing and selling it. It was such a valuable book, even for someone who's not writing a novel. But if I were writing a novel of any kind, I would go back to her book and take a look at
Absolutely.
it.
I mean, she's a great source. And she's now putting together a community of what she calls crones.
Yes.
And I think that's women over 50, myself included. And I signed up to be part of that community and learn from other writers,
Yeah,
female.
I love seeing activities like that where it's focused on women who are really stepping into their power and shaping their lives to suit themselves. I think that's really awesome. And it's what you do in your Substack, basically, as far as owning your ambition. You are entitled to go for it.
Yeah, no limit.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Bonnie, thank you so much for joining me for the interview today. Appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for this time together. I appreciate it.
About this interview series and newsletter. This post is part of our AI 6P interview series on AI, software, and wetware. It showcases how real people around the world are using their wetware, brains and human intelligence, with AI-based software tools, or are being affected by AI. And we're all being affected by AI nowadays in our daily lives, perhaps more than we realize. For some examples, see post, but I don't use AI. We want to hear from a diverse pool of people worldwide in a variety of roles. If you're interested in being a featured interview guest, anonymous or with credit, please get in touch. 6Ps and AI Pods, AI 6P is a 100% reader-supported publication. All new posts are free to read and listen to. To automatically receive new AI 6P posts and support our work, consider becoming a subscriber. It's free.